Excellent. So my name is Craig Pinardo. I'm going to follow through with a roll call. I consider myself here. Erin Bosworth,
Here.
Andy Cohen,
Here.
Jen Ludwig,
Here.
Jonathan Pasqua.
Here.
We do know that Tim Pimento will be excused this evening, and we are forthcoming on Douglas. All right, excellent. Benjamin Marchant will be joining us via Zoom, and you are here. Excellent. I'm looking for 2 motions to approve of the meeting minutes from June 23rd.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. And second? Excellent. Okay, we're going to get right into.
Let's take a vote.
Pardon me?
Let's take a vote.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Hi, Doug.
Hello.
Douglas is in the room.
I'm here. Good evening.
Thank you. And I apologize. The vote for.
So you have a motion and a second, and now we just need to vote to approve the minutes.
Excellent.
So we'll, usually Stephanie or somebody would do it, but you could just say all in favor and we can say aye.
Okay. All in favor of the approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move into new business. The first topic on the agenda this evening was the town process exercise. So we had all charged everyone the last time that we met to contact a member of the town in any capacity, in any department, and give some feedback about that trial, about that exercise. Would someone like to begin? I did pursue this myself, and I do have some information to share. But would someone like to start? If anyone took that exercise on?
Well,
Andy?
I took it on because I needed to call somebody, and I called the tax assessor because I needed some information about one of the possible exemptions on the property tax bill, and I wanted to make sure I understood it. And so I called and I spoke with someone, and they were quite clear, quite concise. It was a pleasant experience, which is always nice to say.
Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
Was that Carrie by chance?
I'm not even sure.
Okay.
Whoever answered the phone.
Okay.
But it was a good experience.
It was a good experience, it was positive, which frankly, I don't call very often, but over the years, I've called a number of times. I've always had a good experience.
Okay, excellent. And we had taken this upon ourselves to do this for not only for the personal piece, but a new business, an existing business looking to contact the town, what the user friendliness would be. If I could take it upon myself, so on a commercial aspect, for commercial property, I'm looking to demo some structures, and I've gone through the town's new online portal process. So all permits in Coventry are being issued by a portal. It's very easy to get lost in cyberspace. And sadly, as I was looking to ensure that all my permits were in place prior to the wrecking ball coming through, reaching out to members of various offices was very difficult. So the existing website puts a collection of people in place for different departments. But I think I was reaching out to someone for private housing. The folks' name under the headlines weren't very clear. So I've reached out now to 3 people to cyberspace. And then I recently reached out to an admin who informed me that one of the 3 email addresses was incorrect, but it's not listed correctly on the town website. So I'm currently in a standstill waiting to pursue, a commercial property project. So again, expanding business, bringing in new business, that's been difficult. So I think that, zoning, permitting, and building departments are, 3 departments that I think businesses would look to contact, not only to expand existing operations, but to build something new. And that's been difficult. So I praise the automation, but it's difficult when you have questions to be asked, and some of the assistants are not very forthcoming with getting back to people either. So, and phones are not being answered. And I do understand that these resources are sometimes out in field. So, they may not be at a desk waiting. I know they have, building inspections to have, done. And, but I think, after we're going on now 17 days, I think, there should
no
be.
callback?
Correct. So, or no response. So I think, that's a long time to wait, especially when you have contractors lined up and everything else, and, bank pending. And so not to get into too much more detail. So that process has been a little challenging.
So Chair Bernardo, so I just want to check. were you calling in with a simulated experience, or is this a real life?
So this is actually a real experience. So I was, prior to when we discussed doing this, I just wanted to share my own personal experience. So this is not some, dubbed exercise. This was,
Okay.
this is true to heart. So,
Were you
So,
able to report the problem with the website to somebody who could address it?
because no one's gotten back to me yet.
That's the.
Yes,
part.
yes. So I had just asked in candidacy or in transparency, that I'm sort of lost in cyberspace with this permit process. So, who can I contact live to either meet at the site or meet in office? And I've yet to hear back from anyone. So, and then one person I did realize was in charge of elderly housing, but that person is listed underneath the building category without a description of what he does.
Yeah.
So it's challenging. I think, again, when you're trying to connect with the town online versus just coming in, and, shame on me for not walking in, but, the buildings are, had I not known the difference, there's a location here across the street. So,
Yeah.
you could be bouncing around, and I think you'd be just wasting too much time for a new automated system. So,
so can I just want to
please.
see, Ben, Mr. Marchand, are you still with us? So I know we've been having some discussions about a possible new website. Is this something, so the portal you're talking about, I haven't been on this portal, but is that something that would be included in the discussion for an entire website, or is this a portal that is?
So this is a new portal. So when I initially reached out to the building department so many months ago, I was simply emailed by a support person that everything is now automated.
Okay.
That individual never sent me a link, just threw me back out into space. So I had to call in and find out, and I went further into the town's website, and I did find where the permit process is linked.
So all the pages, for example, are at Coventry.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. Coventry Town Hall. And when you go into it, then you search permit, it does take you there to a link where you can start your permit process, which I think is fantastic. But, it should give you an update because you do have to register. So, I'm now a registered user, but it should either advise you as to what's left, what to do next, or who to contact throughout the permitting process, because there are different processes. The tax office was very quick to respond that taxes had to be paid before the buildings got knocked down, which of course they were already, which they weren't due yet, but they were paid. So, that was, I think that happened within like 24 hours. But then from there on in, there was an update about a, DEM environmental, which was done. And building structure, ensuring that there was no asbestos and stuff, and that was done. But there's no next steps, and I just kind of have to push it forward. But I think that's really important. When you're looking to modify your business, expand it, do anything that requires a permit, which is basically everything but breathe. We just have to get that process a bit more. Just maybe just more streamlined. But we're in the effort of something new. I think maybe this year or last year, I'm not too sure, but it is a new process.
Mhm.
So I'm happy to have gone through it, but now I just need someone to physically help to understand where I'm at and then where we have to take it next.
So I can add to that, just that this was a new platform that was adopted in January to put all of our permitting online and electronically. We're going to be doing an update to our new website, which will help the user interface find the links and get directed to that. But that's going to be part of our new website project.
Do you have that planned, like a time frame on, or is that something that's already started, the new website, or what?
No, we're at the very most preliminary stages, just looking at other websites and getting a scope of work done by our webmaster to see what kind of service he can provide and for how much. Based on that scope of work, at that point, we might do an RFP to get other quotes from other web services.
Do we think there's an opportunity to come up with some suggestions on how we could help the public on the current portal? Is there capacity for us to provide suggestions there? Oh, I think you're on mute.
I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I think there probably is. I'm not really familiar with it, so I'd have to check.
We're going to segue into part D of the agenda tonight too, so I think we can hold some of those additional enhancements, but I just want to share, part of the exercise was to share the experience. Does anyone else have an experience that they'd care to share more on a,
Well, I can
on a
tell you,
business platform or?
I can tell you what we deal with on a fire department level.
Okay,
So I get calls all day long. I field them constantly for plans, review issues, and commercial, residential sales that need to be approved by the fire marshal, smoke inspections, all that stuff. The real issue though is that's not a town department. It's completely separate from town Coventry.
that's correct.
So,
But critical.
yeah, right.
Critical.
It's one of the absolute needed pieces to commercial development. You have to have that process. So the two major fire districts in town that falls on is Anthony and Central.
Correct.
And their fire marshal divisions are extremely limited because of budget cuts. So they've recently implemented a online portal for fire certificate applications through the state website. That seems to be working a little better, but we're still dealing with that issue. So it is a priority of mine to talk to my board and to see about trying to deal with those issues from an EDC level even, because it's definitely a hindrance for sure.
It
I
is.
get frustrated developers and real estate agents on the phone with me all the time. And, we don't have any control over that. Then that's not a town thing. People don't put that together. They think the town's dropping the ball, and it's not at all. It's not you guys. So, that's definitely a roadblock that I have a little bit of control over. Influence, I should say. I have a little bit of influence that I'm going to push for some change to.
So we've talked about, how, finding ways or how to make it easier for people to do business in and with Coventry. So maybe we can put this on our list of areas that we have direct influence over, that we can provide feedback to say, this is some information that I think would be helpful for the town portal or whatever that is.
Right.
As
So
a
that's
business
interesting.
owner, if I may, I know the pandemic was an anomaly. I hope never to go through again. But every fire marshals tended to, or tried to get out there when processes were changing about limits to customers, et cetera. Now that we're out of the process, or it has changed.
Right.
Businesses are able to go from capacity X to capacity Y. Throughout that process, I was not able to calculate. So I needed to, lean on my fire inspector who was not available.
Right.
Now that we're back to normal, I honestly don't know what my capacity is. I think if we pooled or surveyed most businesses in town, they may or may not know what their capacities are.
Yep.
Certificates are no longer printed or filed or asked to be posted. So I think it's a big gray zone right now,
Yep.
which could, I don't want to lead into a problem.
No, right.
If there are establishments that are over capacity,
Mhm.
but the certificates that once were placed over the doors of many businesses are no longer in place.
Right.
And whether or not you can put in your square footage of your commercial real estate based on what you're taxed on or what you physically know, and then you could generate something to help.
Yeah,
the fire
there's a lot
department.
to it actually. The size of the
there's more things
exits
to-
and the
Correct.
stories on the ground,
Correct.
and there's quite
Correct.
the
So I think
biggest.
there's a lot of,
Yeah.
there are some opportunities with anything new or recently remodeled,
Right.
but as things change.
Yeah,
as-
I agree.
As the
Yeah.
government guidelines change,
Right.
businesses do want to do the right thing.
Right.
I think more so than residential.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
they don't have any say over residential capacity.
Right.
It's-
Right.
Yeah.
Or really, there's no max to how many people can be allowed in a home. Or,
No.
No. Okay.
No.
So, but for businesses, it is right. So,
Correct.
many of the phone numbers that are being given out to call are not being answered.
So to give you just a background, then not to steer off topic
No,
too much,
that's okay.
but the dynamic of what you're dealing with the fire marshals, both those districts got rid of their full-time fire marshals. They don't have them anymore. And what had happened is there are some guys that are trained to the fire marshal level. Being a fire marshal is completely different. It's like versus EMT versus firefighter. They're totally different job descriptions. We happen in Rhode Island have a blended system, but fire marshal is a totally different animal. And so there are just a few guys in each department that happen to have the certification for whatever reason, whether it's a previous job or whatnot, that have said, on my days off, if I have time, I'll be willing to come back for overtime to help you out, because the district won't hire a fire marshal.
Yeah.
So they're you know, and some of the guys were upset about it for a little while. They were just saying they weren't gonna do it because it's really not theirs. It's they were hired to be firefighters, and that's a very difficult area to get into.
It is.
So, but they do it. They do a
Yeah.
really good job, but they're on the
It
floor.
just puts businesses into
It
a very
does.
bad situation where
It does.
some businesses in town do require certain licenses, permits, etc. And the town clerk sends you a renewal request, and they will not issue your renewal of license until you have a fire marshal stamped approval.
Mhm.
Of which now I go to the fire, I'm taking it as personal, but I contact the fire marshal who's unavailable for multiple weeks. I
Right.
go back to the town clerk and say, I need my license because it's now expired. Well, you have to provide us a fire inspection, which I can't do.
Right.
So it runs into a business issue, a big bit when my license is now not renewed. And I need that renewed license to sometimes provide vendors and insurance companies.
Mhm.
And this is, liquor, food,
Yes. Right.
medical,
Right.
and if the town has jurisdiction on your license because they issue your renewal, but you need a fire inspection
Mhm.
report, I can provide them with my fire alarm inspection for my private company quarterly, but I can't, and they are looking for, and there has been some excuses made to get the licenses back out
Right.
because they too are struggling with trying to get it done. So even when it's a priority, because a license needs to be reissued and renewed for the business to operate. And I challenge to think that there may be businesses in town that have not gotten their license renewed or don't have current license posted.
Right.
Medical,
So
food, liquor,
If we can
dining.
pull this into EDC influence,
Mhm.
so this might be an area that we think about whether
And not
the
just new
license,
business, but
not
existing
just
too.
all businesses,
Mhm.
yeah, for any businesses that are required to get a license that needs something like a fire
Which are most inspection.
inspection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any type of temporary approval or something that we can provide if you can show that you're on the waiting list or something like that?
Correct. Of which the town clerk's office will approve that in order to issue the license for you to have on mall, whether or not, because you may have state officials now coming in looking for that.
Yeah.
So many of my licenses are not, are town approved.
Mhm.
And when federal or state level inspectors come in and they look for that, they could actually close that business down, which would be, very challenging.
So Ben, is this something that we could maybe have you take a look at with the clerk's office to see if there's any possibility to do some type of, temporary or pending approval that the business could use for insurance purposes or something while they're waiting on someone like a fire marshal or something who's several weeks backed up?
Yeah, that's a good question because that's a problem where we aren't in control of the fire marshal's schedule. I think it would probably be better coordinated with the building department. I did want to announce to the EDC that this last month I reorganized the building division from under public works to under planning so that the planning and development functionalities are grouped under one house, under one roof. And hopefully that will improve communications on that side for coordinating and planning. But I think that goes hand in hand with the inspections that are due by the fire marshal. I can anticipate the response that I'll get from the town clerk that she doesn't have the authority to grant licenses without the conditions being met. And so I think that's a conversation we're going to have with the fire marshals and the fire districts themselves about how to improve that coordination.
The fire marshal
I
can
agree.
extend that time, I believe. They can say, I'll give you a temp while you're working towards these.
So I'll have that answer
Yeah.
almost immediately. That's an easy one for me to find out. If there's a method that we can use to grant a temporary extension on the fire side. I mean, that's all we can represent on that side. But I will.
To not impact a business for being closed down by state or federal regulators.
Right. And I mean, hopefully,
Something we wouldn't want to-
overall, the situation needs to be fixed. And Chief
Mhm.
Brown right now is really pushing to have a townwide district, which would employ a fire marshal division. And, that's, I support it. And I know a lot of people in town support that. And when you're looking at development, it kind of falls under the infrastructure situation where you're putting a lot of money into an investment in the town. You want to know what the public safety is like, as opposed to the police department, like what's fire, what's EMS like. Coventry, we all know, is a mess when it comes to the infrastructure and the fire and EMS side. It's just split up, it's all lopsided. So Chief Brown's really trying to level it out and organize it. And that would be one big benefit to it, is a fire marshal division that is reliable. I'm sure that would be part of it.
So can we, Mr. Marchant, can we have you and member Pasqua, I think he's talking to someone, just talk offline
He just
and,
gave us a one.
okay. So if you can chat with Mr. Marchant offline and just figure out how maybe the two of you can coordinate with Chief Brown or whomever is appropriate.
Okay.
That would be great to hear, how we could influence that.
Okay, you got it.
Like to move forward on the agenda, if okay. All right, the second item on the agenda is the Rhode Island Central Chamber of Commerce update, and I'd like to pass this on to Erin. And this is in the spirit of us trying to identify part of some feedback on many members as to what our purpose is. I don't think we are here to reinvent any wheel, and there are some EDCs throughout the state that are doing some really wonderful things. So in the spirit of reaching out to resources, Erin, I'd love to hand this over to you as to the effort that you took personally to give us this update.
Thank you. So Ms. Ludwig and I actually, she had the contact of Jennifer Wheelahan, I believe her name is. So she had reached out and included me in the meeting, which I was very grateful for. So Jennifer actually works for the Central Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce. So she supports Coventry, West Greenwich, West Warwick, and some areas of Cranston are being brought into her scope. She supports specifically mostly on the marketing and membership side of things within the Central Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce. And they support everything from what seems like the start of like a ribbon cutting for a business in any of those areas, all the way through support and acting as a liaison for grants and funding to activities, promotion of those activities, and things like that. So Jen and I met with her and really just wanted to get a better understanding of what does for businesses that opt into the membership to go within the Chamber of Commerce, what do they support versus how we can support as part of the EDC. From my perspective, I kind of walked away from that meeting realizing that if they're supporting everything from ribbon cutting beyond, if a business would opt into that, we probably should not really cross over into those boundaries. For me, it was more about how do we look at things that come before that ribbon cutting ceremony, right? Which is a lot of what I think we've talked about here just in our first session. Really stemming around the process, the issues that are faced with getting new businesses, the trials and tribulations that they go through. Ultimately, what we asked Jennifer for, and I haven't seen anything, but I will follow up with her, is really what are some of the Coventry businesses that are participating in the chamber? Can we get a list of those? What is that percentage of their total membership? Just so we have an idea of what percentage of our population of businesses are actually already gaining that support, and maybe where they're not. And then the other thing we asked for specifically was, you work with a lot of the area towns around us, surrounding Coventry. What are they doing well? Where are they really successful in their process upfront from where you support? What do you hear from businesses by the time they get to be a member of the commerce? And then what are some areas that they're kind of falling short too, that maybe we might be better at, or once we find a way, maybe we want to share. So we're hoping to get some of that information as well to really understand what is working well, what maybe we can try to mimic, and then how do we help others along the way as we grow within the EDC.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. Maybe I can offer one comment. So after we met with Ms. Wheelahan, and just as a side note, so she's actually a Coventry resident.
Yeah.
So, she offered, to come in and speak with us or anything that we need to reach out to her. So the items that really stuck out to me about the chamber, the Central Chamber, were that they focus a lot on communication, networking, a lot of the things that I think we weren't sure whether we should focus on. So in my mind, after some reflection, I'm really seeing the difference between private interaction and government interaction. So this is a government committee. So in my mind, I really am interested in focusing on things that are coming through the town and probably less on the networking and communication side, just
Correct.
because there are private avenues there.
Mhm.
So that was helpful to see that those groups exist. And as a business, you can opt into that.
I love that, correct, and via membership.
Yeah.
Yep. If I may also, on a sideline, I reached out to the Rhode Island Commerce Office, which was formerly known as the Rhode Island Economic Development Commission. And while we thought our town process was a bit of a struggle, I was transferred over to the Secretary of State's office, who then transferred me back to the Rhode Island Commerce, which I've been adding some names to a list. So again, this organization, like us, their job is to promote business development and new business for the state of Rhode Island, right? And they are tied into the governor's office, who I now have a contact with there. So we're just I'm trying to get the best resource to come in and help us, sort of like micro down from a state side to potentially a town side. So I have made some contacts through the Secretary of State's office now, the Commerce office, and the governor's office. So they're trying to get the right resource that could help us sort of, understand more of what we can do and what we should be doing as a town entity to support town business and new business growth. It really is just them being macro and us being more micro focused. So there's a lot of resources available and there's a lot of people. They're just trying to get the right state employee to provide us with the best insight. So I thought that was the most, I went right to the top, but I'm also trying to figure out what EDCs exist within towns that we collectively feel are on a growth pattern forward. Not every town has an elected EDC. I think this is a great start for the town of Coventry, but we need to identify, I think, those committees and again, talk to them too. But I'd like to see where it goes from a state level down, because I think they'll give us some really good macro options for us to kind of plug into. Part of what the chamber does, the chamber has networks established at a state level that helps businesses on a fundamental level access funds and grants and things like that. I mean, they've done the work, I think, or they have the connections through most of the chambers, but I'd like to have a direct plug-in through our town department into the state offices. So that's what I'm working on as well. But it's been a lot of phone calls and a lot of wait times, a lot of disconnects. And again, you try to do things remotely, but now that things are becoming more healthy, I think I'm just going to start going up and sort of dressing more appropriately and, kind of just walking into some offices and trying to see where I can get. The only downside is that still a lot of people are remote. So, the voicemails are full. So I'm trying to get the logistics to the state email, whether, it's initial, last name, and just try to send some emails out to get some attention. But or if Ben, or if any of our, state, any political level that people may be connected with that can help with that too, it'd be helpful, because I'm just basically knocking on doors right now through phones and through emails.
Let me know what area in the state government you want to talk to.
That'd be great.
I can get area.
It's been difficult
Like
because
my
most
colleague
people
might
are
go.
remote.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
My colleague plays golf with the governor a couple times a week, so.
So the RI, yes, so anyone in the RI commission office would be great. That would be fantastic.
I'll get you some of this.
This
Okay.
idea of town versus state, the things that we have impact over at a town level are things like ordinances.
Mhm.
And so I know this is not technically on our agenda. Maybe we can put it on for next time.
Okay.
But I do think there are a few examples of things that businesses have had to go through in the last year or two that we could probably revisit through the ordinance level. So why don't I can provide one or two examples and we can put it on the agenda for next month, and then we can figure out as a committee here or commission here, where are maybe a few of the areas that we want to focus on first. That would be most helpful. because it's not just one ordinance, there's multiple ordinances. And just for a little background in general, so the town has what we call a comprehensive plan. We went out to bid in the spring. We did not get any offers back, and we don't know why that is. So we've asked our planning director, Mr. Crossman, to reach out personally to a few of the groups he would have thought put a bid in to say, hey, did we, was our timeline too short, or how can we open this up so people bid on it? So we're awaiting a little bit of information on that. Through that process, which is a longer term process, that's usually around a 2-year process. Some sort of consulting firm or someone will come in and help us analyze if this is the direction that you want to go. Here are areas that are conflicting, like you have one ordinance that says this and one that says this, and then the committee chooses which way to go. So I think there may be an opportunity for us as a committee to pick a few areas that could be faster than waiting 2-3 years to address.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So something like maybe an ordinance review commission, not subcommission because we're.
So we can come up with our own examples of changes,
Yeah.
and there's a couple of different avenues that we can go through. So for example, we can bring them to the town council and say, as an EDC, we'd recommend that you take a look at these ordinance changes. We could take, if it's a I'll just give you one example. If it's a zoning ordinance change, we'd probably want to take it to the zoning committee and say, hey, this is the change. This is why we want to look at this. We want to talk about getting your support on this.
Yep.
If it's not a specific commission, we don't necessarily have to go that route, but it just depends on which ordinance we're taking a look at.
Who has the authority to actually make a change?
So any change that comes through is going to need to go through the council.
And then be voted on, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
So how should we parking lot this for the next agenda?
Yes,
Next
let's put on the next agenda,
For search and
and
review,
I'll send out
traffic, construction, I think these are all major concerns, right? Impacting businesses today.
I think you're talking about a concern though, and I'm talking about specific ordinance changes.
Correct.
So if
To avoid concerns that we've had.
if you can find a location that it's either an ordinance or in the charter that you want something different, then that's totally fine. But if it's something brand new, such as a communication plan, that's something that we would probably want to bring Mr. Marchand into and figure out how do we do that together with town staff.
Okay.
If it's an ordinance, so I'll give you one example. We have zoning laws basically on how big your sign can be.
Mhm.
And so I know that there's been 1 or 2 businesses over the last 1 to 2 years down on Tyoke heading into West Greenwich that have had some major issues because of their sign, and they have to keep coming back into the meetings month after month. So could we take a look at that as a group and say, these are some areas that we'd like to try and address so we don't have to have these businesses having to come back into these meetings month after month?
Okay. Excellent.
So I'll bring 1 or 2 to discuss, and if maybe people want to have a think about any feedback that you've had before, and we can figure out where to go from there on what we want to pursue or continue researching.
Okay. Excellent.
So one item you did bring up that, again, it's not on the agenda, so we can't have a big discussion on it, but communication on things like traffic and road construction. I think Mr. Marchand, we had talked about possibly looking at something like this on how we could better connect into some of the projects going on, for example, with Kent County Water and some of the local construction companies like on Sandy Bottom Road. I know they're still going to be doing that bridge construction for the next 1 to 2 years. So how would you suggest we move forward on firstly understanding how that gets communicated?
And then prior to you starting, could I just say that this would be a great segue into item D, believe it or not,
Okay.
for the town of Coventry EDC general website updates. So I know that there's been a lot of discussion about website updates. So this might sort of segue into that.
Okay.
I think it'd be good.
So first, I'm going to be starting from an internal perspective and just making sure that I have good communication between Public Works, planning, building, licenses, permits, and the police department. I think if all those units are communicating and coordinating about road projects and the things going on, then we can demand better communication from the private parties that are doing those projects. And then we can kind of filter that back to my office where I can make sure that regular updates are being posted to the website. Now, I don't want to be personally responsible for every aspect of that. So hopefully we'll be able to get a process in place where Public Works or planning or the police department can add updates to it. But to start, we're going to need to centralize it to make sure we're getting all the information flowing in a timely manner.
And would that include whether or not the state or an agency like Kent County Water is doing work in the town on either a state or a town road? Because there's been such a convoluted concern here with a state agency doing work on a state road. The town tends to not know or be engaged in that. So would that, with the scope that you're looking at, would that help to advise you on projects like that? So from utility, whether or not they be private, state, I don't think there's any town utilities per se, right? But would that basically filter all of the layers that transpire here in Coventry?
Yes, that's the intent.
Okay.
I don't know if it will, because, for instance, I believe our police detail is assigned to all projects in Coventry, but I don't know if the state has the freedom to assign their own detail from their own state troopers or whatever. So there might be some instances where we wouldn't know, but I think we'll be able to catch most of it.
Excellent, excellent. Certainly the bigger projects that are going to impact, businesses, et cetera. Okay. Okay.
So can we ask one question? So Mr. Marchant, I think we said there was a local ordinance saying what times the construction could take place. And so, for example, we had that recent Kent County Water, the mains being replaced on Main Street. So we were able to start the work a little bit earlier in the day, but not overnight. But then I saw what I thought was a similar situation on Sandy Bottom Road where they were able to work overnight. So is there some sort of notice that they give us on that, or?
I don't know. The only thing I've seen is in our ordinance is that we don't allow construction from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. And so I don't know why or how they would have been permitted to work overnight on Sandy Bottom Road, because I hadn't heard of that.
It might have been off of Tioga where it comes down to Sandy Bottom. So I'm gonna I'll do a little research to see what day that was, and maybe we can find out.
Yeah. Let me know the day and time, and we can check with the police department or Kevin McGee and see what they know about that.
I just don't want one business or one entity being told one thing and then another group is allowed to do it. So it'd be helpful to understand why one group was allowed to do that.
So in regards to starting a business in Coventry, I spent about 45 minutes to an hour on the town website, looking to start a business. And there was many options there, whether it be retail, medicine, and there were it was fairly robust, but it directed you to a lot of state entity levels. So, it really didn't provide a lot of insight in what would happen here in town and what would be necessary. So there were links to the Secretary of State to file for your LLC or your S Corp, et cetera. So I think herein lies that as we think about website updates, we'd love to make sure that we're able to provide EDC insight for both existing and future business. And I think we talked about a link that last time. So again, I think the website does a good job with getting you, like when you decided to do what you wanted, but there wasn't a lot of information for someone to research the town, to think about whether or not their business concept might be appropriate, here in town, or how complicated it would be at a town level to start before directing you to a state level agency, right? Because someone's looking to invest in town, and it kind of just directed me out of town. That's a general feedback as we think about the website off of the agenda item. Has anyone else, sort of mouse around the website?
I think what you're a pathway, like a clear
Correct.
business pathway, and I'm actually building something similar right now for a career pathway, and that's really what you need. You need to
Right.
be able to get on there, understand what it's going to take, and just take you through it. And you can do it on a website easy enough. It's
Right.
not hard to do. So yeah, I think we just need to figure out what happens when they reach the website. And have a business focus pathway and daily documents, arguments that they find, make it easy.
Correct.
But yeah, so yeah, I think that's
This is something I definitely want to capture on the update to the website, is a businesses services kind of facilitation. So you know right where to go to get everything that you need. It kind of gives you a process, a timeline, as much information as you can get them. And I haven't ever seen that done well on other websites. And so even taking a survey of other municipalities in Rhode Island, I'd be curious to know if everyone could kind of take two and go check out other municipalities to see if anybody has anything you like in terms of how they're doing it that we could emulate.
I kind of envision, if you're a business owner in town, you have a username and password, and you can get into your screen and you can see all the updates, notices, anything to do with your taxes or anything like that right there. If you have a problem, right on that. So, and that's, you can see when these people open up these messages, when they're online, you can do all that stuff with the type of website like that on the dashboard on your side.
Right, and I do believe twofold, it would help the town very much to understand what businesses operate and how they operate,
Right.
because I know there's a struggle for that purpose. And it would help a business owner, even if you just want to have a permit reprinted, you can go in and submit a request. Sometimes the copies get damaged or something like that. So yes, I mean, I think that would be beneficial for the town, and that would help us to get into a better communication path. So as businesses register, we'll be able to forward them information that's in fact necessary. I think that's great. Yeah, I think a lot of the information, I was really impressed that, I mean, there was hundreds of business concepts, but I think the website was state borrowed when it should be more town specific, because there's hundreds of business options that you could do. And I don't think we need all of that. I think that's too much to maintain. If you were looking to either build commercial real estate in town or just open a business, you just need some, general information, demographics, general contacts. Yes. I think we have an opportunity just to simplify it. I think it was very complicated for someone, and it kind of got a little bit overwhelming, and you might just not get what you're looking for out of it.
I'm a big fan of the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yes.
And that's what you need to do. That's the easiest thing. If you throw so much information to somebody, they gotta shut down that or look the other way. It's just how it is.
And you get lost in a lot of pages.
Right.
So I think keep it at a state level.
Just circling back to the communication on the construction end of things, is there's a way the town can send push messages out to businesses saying at this time you're going to be experiencing shutdown on your road, anything like that? Like the town doesn't have a list of cell phones of the owners of the businesses, so they can just quickly get them with a message or anything like that to tell them there's gonna be some disruption in their area
Right.
ahead of time, expect it for this long or immediate changes.
Like I get updates through Verizon that, you potentially could have a telephone and or internet shortage, and just to be advised. I think with this portal that we're talking about, and some of the, and what Ben was talking about, and just with some of the town updates that we want to do, I think that would be fantastic. I mean, that they don't.
Right.
That the town clerk tends to have my email address. Just being candid, but
Yeah.
I've heard that there's a
Right, but
difficult
there's not a-
challenge for the
There's not a
town to
database
contact
to
businesses.
quickly, reach out.
No.
Yeah.
No, there's not. So.
Does anyone know if there's anything in the budget that would allow for the development of this stuff? Because what you're talking about.
That's
is
a very
probably
good
pretty
question.
costly.
That's a very good question. And I'm hoping that part of what, Ben was talking about the infrastructure update, that maybe that would be included in that. So I think we have to stay focused on what we feel that we would need to be effective and how to get the communication out to everyone. So I think businesses should have to register before major permits or licenses get renewed. I think we have to kind of tie that into that if a business needs a permit of any type through this town office, that they have to be logged in and they have to set up their portal. I mean, we'll have to tie that in to make sure that everyone's participating. I know there's a lot of LLCs operating in town that are just for insurance purposes, but.
When just start and going back to, I've been thinking of everything, I've been sitting here listening, is with the circling back to the fire marshal component and bringing them in maybe earlier in the process into the town meeting or something where they're, because they are separate
Right.
from it, and bring them in earlier so the person can have a better sense and understanding of what that's going to also entail, whether it's going to be a fire alarm system at the business or whatever it is, when they're thinking of these changes, where they had someone who would have their way in on it at the meetings instead of after the fact when you're,
Yeah, you have to involve them because it's such a huge
it's
part.
massive.
Yeah, it's a huge part of this.
It's either you get the green light or you don't with that.
Right,
It's-
exactly. I think though, I mean, these are all great ideas, but I think we have to know where the town stands on a building website, where they're at and all that stuff before, because we could talk for hours about ideas on the website. We have to really know where they're at so we can point ourselves and just be effective that way.
So we need to provide feedback to Mr. Marchand, because he's the one that's bringing the potential new website to the council.
Okay.
And that's where we would get feedback and
Okay.
funding.
Beautiful.
Okay.
So Ben, it looks like you're aboard the train, but so the feedback, it sounds like is it's possibility to have some type of portal or something for businesses to log into. That would be a bonus for some of the things that we're looking at.
Sounds good.
So as we move on to the final item on the agenda, if we could think about very specific priorities that we could really focus on and move mountains this year, I think it would be to circle back to what you had mentioned, Jen, about really looking at the ordinances and the zoning in town. I mean, I do know that there's a lot of opportunities with that, and I think that could be something that if we did bring to the table, again, we want to make the town more business friendly for both existing and future. Would you feel that that would be a feasible? I mean, I'd like to have some action this year. I mean, as we look at our meeting agenda for the next couple months, I mean, I'd really like to be prepared. And based on the council meeting schedules and when they meet and when, voting would happen for different things, that's something that I'm not clear about. I'm not
So-
sure what the group would be, but I mean.
Ordinances are going to require public hearing, for example.
Okay,
And if we were to make a change to something like zoning, we
okay,
would probably want to get on zoning committee radar first.
okay.
So we would have to factor that in a little bit. I've learned that nothing moves quickly around here. So if you want to talk about maybe some short-term objectives,
Yes.
it sounds like we could focus on feedback for the current website, for some of the communication that Ben has with some of the staff here.
Okay,
And then kind of medium term, the ordinances, because first we'll have to find which items we think are worth reviewing.
Mhm.
And then we should, as a group, say, we think this would be best, and in essence, draft the changes that we would want.
Mhm.
And then it has to go through the process of getting reviewed and the public hearing and all that.
okay,
So that will take a little bit longer.
okay,
And that's going to bring us into 2022.
okay. I would just love for this commission to be associated with positive change,
Mhm.
with us being, on target with looking at some opportunities that affect different businesses now, from signage to construction work, things
Well,
like that. Like I'd like
one
for us to
thing-
kind of have lived through what we've all lived through with, businesses going back and forth about signage and zoning meetings that are delaying, new businesses from coming into town, right? Yeah, I mean, that would be
One
great.
thing
How
we
can use your
haven't
money?
talked about, and it's not on our agenda right now, maybe we can put it on for next month, is possible COVID funding opportunities. So we did have the president of RIPEC come and give us some information to the council a few weeks ago. And so, for example, the town is receiving COVID funding. So for example, I'm going to say something totally random. We don't have to do this, just as an example. If we feel that businesses were hit hard in Coventry, is there some type of social program that we want to do where we offer, all new businesses for the next year a certain incentive or something for hiring a Coventry worker or something like that? So
Spending more force.
yeah, so it's some type of either I don't know if an incentive is the right word, but something that we'd have to be able to tie it back to COVID. So that would either be tied to our unemployment rates or something that we could prove that what we're doing is in line with a result of the pandemic. So if we want to maybe talk about a few of those ideas, I think that would be a good topic, because we would need to tell the council, we would need to provide some sort of recommendation to the council sooner rather than later, because we've already started talking about what should we do with the funds that we've received.
What's the dollar amount on those funds?
Sorry?
What's the dollar amount on those funds?
Oh, geez. So the school side has also received funding, and then the municipal side has received funding. So
This piece would fall under
municipal,
Yeah.
yes. Ben, do you remember the amount that they have said we're getting?
The cumulative total was like $10 million, but they're doing it in different tranches. And we got our first 1.4 million deposited this month. And there's going to be some other deposits in the future, but the presentation we got at the council meeting was that the later tranches could be, what they're offering up, they could take away on the state shared revenue side, and we don't really know how that's going to pan out.
So for example, just because you may have seen someone say, oh, Coventry is getting all this money, we've actually only received 1.4 million. So,
Right.
so
Yeah, they
we
don't-
obviously want to be realistic in what we're doing. But that's kind of the ballpark of what we would be receiving in the packages.
Where's that coming from?
That's federal, I think, right? It's from American Recovery Plan, I believe, Rescue Plan. Biden money.
So I think there's 3 robust topics for our next meeting and our next meeting agenda, which is going to require some legwork on our behalf. The COVID funding piece is going to be significant because now that's happened. So I'd like for us to get around maybe doing some research to see how the funds might have been used elsewhere, what we feel would be our best idea for businesses in town, and how that money could be advised to the council to potentially be leveraged and used. In regards to the ordinances, Jen, you had mentioned earlier that you're going to look at how we could get copies of the town charter and existing ordinances that we could either link to.
Yeah, everything's actually online.
It is.
Yeah, so
Okay. I've never looked. So for
I
us,
can have Mr. Marchant, can I ask Stephanie to send out the link to get to the charter and ordinance? I forget. Let me think about this.
I had once looked at 8 years ago a sign ordinance, and I was printed out like a 35-page
They
paper
could be.
booklet.
They could
But
be,
if
or
it's
even longer.
not, if it's saved somewhere, I mean, I just redid the sign that I had because it was there. But so I'd love to know where. I didn't think.
So
I think it
rather-
came off of someone's computer. Yeah. So maybe if Stephanie has links today.
Hey, Craig, I can screen share if you want to see it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was just pulling up the website.
Okay.
Can we click continue on the little box? Thank you.
That's great.
So Cody,
they're just information documents.
okay,
It's all
Sorry, Ben, it was hard to hear you. So information and services, town
Town
ordinances or
yes,
town charter?
Okay.
I think another short, it sounds like it could be a long-term thing, but I know a lot about what's going on. I don't think it is, but another short to medium-term thing is, we talk about fire districts and solving the issue of fire marshals, and even work with Chief Brown to regulate and organize and kind of level the playing field in the fire districts town of Coventry, which is a big thing for developers. I know it is. So I can open up.
How
those
so?
convers- What's that?
How so?
So when you have a develop, as far as how so as far as
Why-
how it's a roadblock or?
Yeah.
So when a developer comes in, they want to know a couple of things, ISO ratings, because it's going to affect the value of their insurance. How much, so if I'm going to build a residential apartment building with 20 apartments in it. They're going to pay insurance on it. Insurance, one of the first things they ask for is fire hydrant. They're already concerned about fire districts and the fire departments. And so insurance companies look at something called ISO, and every few years they come into your local community, and the insurance service industry, which is ISO, comes in and they do an evaluation on your fire department specifically. They look at your manpower, how it's structured, your training, how many calls you do, how many fires you have. They look at all that kind of stuff, and obviously fire marshal stuff too. And so when you have fire districts that are operating in different levels, and they are some have a really poor ISO rating, some have a good one, some have a medium one. When they see that, you know, your fire marshal division is not staffed well, your trucks are thin, things like that, it gives you an ISO rating that scares these people off, because it's a bill that they're going to have to pay. It's cheaper to build a building in West Warwick because the ISO is cheaper. It has a huge impact on insurance rates. A lot of people don't think so, but it does. So public safety and protection of the investment that you're putting in your town, they look at the police department, they absolutely look at the fire department. So you know, and when you talk about Coventry, one of the things that comes up is they say, oh, you know, Coventry's known for their fire district issues and all these extra taxes of fire districts. But I mean, there's a way to fix it. Cumberland has a townwide fire district, and nobody has an issue with it, and it works well. You know, so you know, there's definitely, I think that would help. It'd help on the residential side, and it would help on the commercial side.
Certainly.
Yeah, right, 100%. So I think that's definitely worth exploring. Chief Brown's been in this town for a long time.
So just to give you a little bit of feedback,
Yeah,
almost every person I talk to
Yeah.
says they don't want additional buildings. They don't want additional residential communities. They don't want
Right.
any more developers.
I agree.
So
Yeah, yeah. Right,
there's going to be a lot of different opinions on that one.
right.
If you can think about how that specifically relates to Economic Development
Right.
Commission, that would be helpful, because I'm having a little bit of trouble figuring out how we want this committee to solve that problem.
Right. So it's more so along the lines of commercial development. A commercial developer, when they come in, they look at the risks to their investment to build a warehouse, to build a strip mall, and they have to pay insurance on that. And that's why they'll look at the fire and rescue portion of the town, like Clarion Chemical. They rely heavily on fire services out of the Coventry Fire District. We just got a letter the other day asking us to make the sign. They wanted us to sign to make sure that we respond to incidents over there. I mean, they're very concerned about it. And that was a company that just bought that out. So that is on their radar, big time. And that you know, some businesses will turn away because the fire and rescue protection isn't there. If they look at a building down in Harris and they know that the next closest fire station to them is actually Arnold Road. It's not Anthony, it's Arnold Road, because Anthony doesn't belong to the Harris area.
Mhm.
So those are issues that really hinder economic development, commercial development, because smart developers look at infrastructure, and that's part of it, 100%. Fire and rescue protection, water, sewer, all that stuff.
I think the issue that we're going to face is, do we want to make it easier for developers in that space? So maybe we can figure out how we want to do that on the commercial side,
Okay.
because on the residential side,
No, I know. I agree. You know,
It's
it's
in the district, right? Everyone wants their privacy to be protected,
Yeah.
right.
their investments, but you know, for a business owner who's looking to expand their business, either demo and rebuild, new businesses looking to build. I mean, I do know that my personal commercial insurance is considerably higher.
Right.
You know, and conversations were, you know, could you take your business out of town? And I said, no, you know, that must stay here. So,
Mhm.
you know, so yes, I mean, I think that'd be difficult for, you know, like a Lowe's coming in or Target or, you know, a large small business coming in that wants to employ 30, 40 people in a, you know, 10,000 square foot new situation. Yeah, I mean,
Well,
that's a negative impact.
Right, and they're separate districts, so, you know,
Again,
like,
do I
again,
invest in West Greenwich, Coventry, or North Kingstown with
right,
my business, you know, and well, Coventry is really, you know, and they're gonna put X's on it for us.
yeah, oh,
for
yeah,
that.
you know, like, again, you know, you have, I'll bring up Clarion and Roads Technology again. When they look at their profile, they got one fire department, one fire truck, and 2 people to respond. They don't have a town department, like a town-wide department that can provide 3 or 4 fire engines, a ladder truck, a hazmat truck to that scene. They have one fire engine and one ladder truck if the guys are in the building. You know, and only enough people to take one piece of apparatus in the entire complex. So that's a problem. That's a problem for a developer, it's a problem for businesses here. That, you know, it's gonna help the businesses, it's gonna give them some relief to have that type of coverage to be able to help them in the ISO. When bring the ISO rating down, you decrease their insurance bills. It's better for the businesses.
There's some great retail space on Route 3 that's yet to be housed and developed. I mean, as we typically Coventry, you know, Benny's, right? That
Right.
space has remained vacant for a period of time, you know, aware that there's some concern with water flooding and also there's concern with the insurance. It's very expensive to house a business that size in that space if it's not subdivided. And we have smaller subdivided spaces already in town, so there's no reason to subdivide that because their space is empty. You know, going further west on Route 3, where some former, you know, pharmacies were, there's a huge space right there on the corner of Sandy Bottom Road and Ty Oak that's been vacant for a very long time. You know, Prime.
Was that the prior?
Right.
That was
Aid,
the problem,
yeah.
yes, and that business owner, or that property owner is struggling to re-rent that space.
Yeah.
You know, with either a small business, with a larger business that, you know, has an entity there, because there's a lot of expenses here
Yeah.
that are not necessarily of the same category in other towns nearby too.
So this theme that I'm hearing is infrastructure. What do we have in place versus what we don't have in place? Maybe that's something that we look at for 2022. Identifying the longer term aspects that we can have control over.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
And I had one
But
other
an
item.
overarching
Right.
component though, I think is
I had one other item for COVID funds to think about also. So beautification. And I don't know if it's truly beautification or if it's function, but things like benches in town, signage, things like that. I'm wondering if we might be able to get a COVID spin on that, considering we were forced to do things outside. You know, even just simple things like coming into the town hall, only a certain number of people are allowed inside. So what does some of that mean for here? In town, are there signs and things falling over? Do we need that for emergency response? So it's just another angle that we can think of when I think about I don't know if everybody has this packet on, if anybody needs, it's right here. So on the first kind of section that Mr. Marchant sent to us 2 weeks ago on 5 objectives of economic development. In my mind, I'm just trying to think about what are some of the things that relate to these categories that might go in the short or medium term. So this is on the top, it says Economic Development Commission, Wednesday, 23.
Okay,
6
the
p.m.
notes one.
Yeah, so he had emailed this to us as just a printed copy. So I'm trying to, you know, think about what are some of those short and medium term things that we can do that are in the scope of these several areas. And then longer term, we can figure out how does infrastructure and different things like that happen if we can make some strides. And if we take the first step and we're making it easier for businesses to operate here, Not only is that a short or medium term win, but that will, I think, give us some insight into what some of the bigger problems are that we can have influence over. So that might be a strategy we can consider.
Where is town?
I'm sorry?
Where is town? You
Where
said
is
putting benches in town. Where's town?
So for example, near bike paths, on some of the public properties we have, around town hall, places where people would congregate. So for example, only a certain number of people were allowed into the town hall during COVID. So, do we need more benches outside? Do we need something that, I'm just using that as one example, but do we need more signage in town that says, where you're headed, or where the historical buildings are, things like that, or street signs, things like that would be helpful for emergency services. So I'm just trying to figure out a way
You have
that
to
we
be
can
very
help.
strategic to tie in order to qualify. As an example, the trestle on 117, right near 116, is completely rusting out. It's Grow Coventry, I think it's GOV, OV, but like
we're trying
a
to
formalized, signage point like that, or the Welcome to Coventry signs. I mean,
Yeah.
can we actually leverage those funds for that type of beautification, which would be,
I think we
helpful
have
for
to
anyone coming into
figure out-
town?
Yeah, we have to
not
figure out
going to a
the,
ghost town.
we have to figure out the COVID tie back.
Yep.
So if it's signage that would help emergency personnel,
I see.
that could be a good tie back.
Okay.
The trestle bridge is a tough one. We're
I
trying
don't need to, but just, on a very popular throughway, and
Mm.
as we come into Route 3 or onto 116, it's just that much of the incoming signage for anyone traveling into Coventry through
If-
very
if you
major
can-
arteries.
If you can come up with a good COVID related tie back, I would be very interested in hearing that. That would be very
People
helpful.
might use the bridge
So-
to jump off of
Okay.
while they're waiting to get, no.
They want to know
but-
which town they're in when jumping.
Okay.
Right. No, but I'm trying to be more,
I think that, it's just maybe repurposing funds. I mean, you could find probably an easier way to spend the COVID money, and that money would free up some areas that you can shift it over to be able to fix the bridge.
Possibly.
Yeah, just that's how I would operate it in the district. We would just buy this instead. And then that would free up the line item that we had here because we were able to justify it here and just move that money elsewhere.
So we may have that opportunity in some ways. So for example, over the winter, paying part of police salaries, we did something similar to what you were talking
Yeah,
about.
right.
I don't know how strict they're going to be with this next round.
Right.
So we'll have to see. First, we need the idea
Yeah.
and how it would tie back.
Yep.
And then, those are all open things that we could either as a group bring to the council and say, these are things we as an EDC think you should consider, or we can give them to Ben, or, however we want to move forward with that.
Can I just interject that I got a call from someone at RIDOT concerned about our timeline for the trestle bridge, and they didn't have it on their STIP plan for this round through 2023. And was this something we were wanting to do? And I said, yeah, no, we don't have any plans yet. We're just talking about something that's of interest. So we definitely need to plan that one out with RIDOT since it's in their right of way and they have an interest in it. But their point was there was no funding for it from them.
Of course.
Of course there wasn't.
I do think, while we've suffered through the process of the infrastructure improvements from Kent County Water and sewer, et cetera, I think now it's time to really, turn that around into bragging rights too, right? So I feel that as we think about an EDC tie-in for updates to the website, I think we really have to start, I don't say advertise, but make awareness to these improved infrastructure benefits, because for developers, new businesses coming in, there may be businesses that may have wanted to invest in Coventry, but the cost of a septic system and a grease trap, et cetera, or they may not have had city water access, or, so, as we've lived through it, we're moving forward, but now we really have to really sort of identify the public arteries. So if someone's looking to make an investment for their concept, can they do that? And how quickly can they determine whether or not that site has, and maybe that's through the real estate opportunity, but, I think the town is making great strides with these improvements. And, and that's gonna bring in new business and new investments, I think, where they may not have considered us before because we were just too rural. So I think I'd like to make sure that gets tied in to.
We can't be the
you know.
first people that are trying to do this. So I know that we said we'd take a follow-up to try and look at some websites for Ben on other county, cities and towns. Do we maybe just want to assign one city or town to each of us to take a look at so that
Sure.
we're not duplicating?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yes, of course.
Because
Of
I think
course.
if they have
Which is
something
great.
like that, that's something we could mirror rather
Of
than
course.
just start from scratch.
And again, if there's a listing for something, but maybe, maybe even prior to there being a listing that someone's looking to, obviously, if you're looking to buy commercial real estate that's on the market, they're gonna tell you whether or not it's tied into utilities. But if someone's doing more broad research on that, that's what I'm getting at, that we are developing in that regard. And I think
Well,
the
what
town's
are-
moving forward positively.
What are some of the towns that we might want to consider? I'm just thinking where I do some of my shopping. So,
North
like,
Kingstown, Cranston,
yeah, Cranston.
right? East Greenwich,
Newport.
Newport,
Yep, so
correct.
Off the wall.
Newport, Middletown.
Yep.
Can anyone else bring up some?
Warwick has
Warwick,
a lot of,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of us. 1, 2, 3, 6. We need one more. So North Kingston, Cranston, Warwick,
Westerly.
Westerly.
or Narragansett. I think Narragansett's
Narragansett's a good
becoming
one.
less of a seasonal
Mm.
resort town to a
Sure.
more,
Yep.
or Wakefield.
Mm.
Narragansett, Wakefield.
Okay, so North Kingston, Cranston, Warwick, East Greenwich, Newport, Narragansett. So sorry, we need 2 more. Wakefield, did you say?
Wakefield.
And what, we need 1 more, or we don't have to have 1 more, but
Just don't think I've,
Jamestown. Something
no, I think that's too rural,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
Not to.
Yeah, okay.
how about West Warwick, just right next door, just to see what
Yeah.
they have.
Sure.
Yeah, right.
I had them written down, but I'm like, I'm not doing so hot.
Well, we're just looking at their website to
Yeah,
see what
yeah.
ideas they
Alright.
have.
Okay,
Let's do
should
it.
we make assignments now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take East Greenwich.
I'll take Newport.
I'll
Newport,
take West
Middletown.
Warwick. I need some entertainment.
I'll take Cranston. I love Target. That's why I said Cranston.
Is Middletown on there?
Wait, you go all the way to Cranston for Target?
I like the one over there.
Oh my God.
Well, it's like
You drive by
in be-
2 other
in
Targets.
between there and I don't know. Once you have a store, you have a store. So we didn't have Middletown, but we could.
It doesn't matter. What do you have left?
We have Warwick, Narragansett, and Wakefield, and North Kingston.
Wakefield would be a
Look
good
at
one. If I were to envision a town that I would want to live in, like Wakefield gives me the same vibe of like the stores and
Mhm.
the businesses and the restaurants and the main street and
The Main Street quaint with
Yeah.
with the mix of residential and Main
Yes.
Street too. When you walk through Old Wakefield,
Mhm.
you
To
see
North
a
Kingston.
great mix of
North
both
Kingston.
residential.
agreed.
Did you say North Kingston?
Okay.
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 What's that?
Warwick or Wakefield or Narragansett, those 3 are open.
I'll take Narragansett.
All right. Okay, did I miss 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? And we can chat with Tim, but we're already gonna have 6, so I'll take Cranston, and actually I'll take Warwick as well because I know
They're awesome.
there probably is. But so I have talked with Luke Murray a little bit. He works for the town of Warwick.
Oh,
And so he could probably give us some good insight as well. So I'll take 2.
okay.
And so just to confirm, so we're just gonna look and see what business resources does the town have? Okay,
That's right.
Just look on our website and see what we like.
Are we in agreement to move forward? All right. Is there any public comment
Are we streaming
Going
live?
on from the public.
Okay. Great. Okay, are we in motion to
So,
adjourn this? Oh, sorry.
yeah, so you just need to ask for a motion to adjourn that.
Correct. Yep. We're going to adjourn at 7:45 PM and motion by
I'll make a motion.
Second.
John,
And then we'll vote.
and then we'll vote to close. All say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Travel safely.
Thank you. See you later.